Good guy, that Mike Garafolo.
You'll never meet a nicer guy and a busier guy because this is a very busy trade deadline in terms of big names on the move. Here's Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network, joining us from the NFL Network studios in Los Angeles. Mike, you mentioned to keep an eye on the Jets last week in our trade deadline primer. You did not mention Sauce Gardner. How shocking was this deal for you, and how shocking was the price that the Colts paid?
We talked about Quinnen Williams. We talked about Breece Hall. We did not talk about Sauce Gardner, excuse me. However, there is a clip out there from the NFL Network where I did mention last week, I said, I heard from a defensive coach who asked me, you think the Jets would part with Sauce Gardner? And I said, no, I don't think so. And frankly, I think the Jets would have probably told you the same thing at the time. But once you get an offer for 2 first-round picks, you've really got to strongly consider it because that's the return that teams are usually unwilling to pay for a franchise-tagged player. So this was a franchise-tagged price, plus they got A.D. Mitchell, the wide receiver, on top of it. So I know some folks have been telling us, oh, you guys are hyping Sauce a little too much. He hasn't been quite as good as you think. But this regime, because a lot of times you see a change general manager, coach, and they say, okay, we're going to be willing to move on from the previous regime's guy. But it was this regime that paid Sauce Gardner just a couple of months ago. Now, the structure of the deal did allow for them to trade him without huge salary cap hits, and the contract was transferable. But usually to pay a guy like that and then trade him within a couple of months, extremely rare. I know Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Colts, is doing cartwheels tonight, knowing he's got Shavarius Ward on one end. He's got Sauce Gardner at the other cornerback position. Finally, he was telling me on the field in August, let me know which cornerbacks are going to be cut by other teams. We need all the cornerback help we can get. A couple of months later, they get one of the biggest ones via trade. As for Quinnen Williams, yes, I did mention him. I didn't think it was likely, to be honest with you, because I knew a team was going to have to pay. And the Cowboys, from my understanding, went at the Jets with an offer of a first-round pick and a mid-round pick plus a player who wound up being Mozzie Smith. And that didn't work out. Now, what they did was they sort of moved the picks around where the first-round pick became the pick in 2027. So that sort of evens it out. It becomes a 2 and a 1, but in their mind, it was almost like a 1 and a 3. So it moved it up around. That's how the calculations work in their mind. When it's 2 drafts away, you kind of knock it down around. But in the end, the Jets get 3 first-round picks today. They are stockpiling draft pick compensation for the chance to go up and get themselves a quarterback, maybe even trade for a quarterback at some point. They're going to have to do that. The Jets have got to solve the quarterback position. It's been forever. They've got all this draft pick compensation. Now you got to deliver on it, Darren Muji, general manager.
Let's talk, though, about the Cowboys. You mentioned it. Jerry Jones goes out. He gets Quinnen Williams. He's trying to shore up that defensive line. But is this enough, Mike, in your opinion, for this team to actually contend, especially based on what we saw from them on Monday night?
No, and these moves were designed, one, look, Jerry's very frustrated with where they are as a team right now, so it does help in 2025. But they weren't going to make any moves without them being helpful in 26 and beyond. And these guys are, include Logan Wilson in that, the linebacker that they gave up a 7th for, which is pretty much nothing when it comes to these trades. A 7th-round pick for a guy who's been a 100-tackle guy before and just fell out of favor in Cincinnati, so a fresh start for them. You saw how badly they were run over the other night by the Cardinals, even in situations where they knew Arizona was going to run the football. It's been frustrating for Jerry Jones because he made the Micah Parsons trade to get Kenny Clark, the defensive tackle, because we need to shore up our run defense. Well, they haven't been any better with him. So now you add Quinnen Williams to the mix. I can tell you this. Williams had asked the Jets for a trade. That's what was happening behind closed doors. That's why I mentioned him to you, because we had heard rumblings that was going on. So he gets his wish. He's got a broad smile. Quinnen Williams got one of the best smiles in the NFL. I think you're going to see it a lot in the near future now that he's in Dallas.
Any surprises for you, Mike, regarding players who were not dealt on Tuesday?
Some surprises, I'd say some guys that we were monitoring. Let's start with the big one, Trey Hendrickson. I think as we got closer to the trade deadline, it became less and less likely that he was going to be moved because the Bengals weren't willing to eat money and they were still looking for a high return on him. So not overly surprised that he was not traded. Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. My understanding is Miami wanted a first-round pick plus So if you had a high to mid first round pick, you also had to have something on top of that. If you had a late first round pick, you had to really come strong potentially for that one. So Waddle stays put in Miami, a guy that they still see as part of their future. We talked about Breece Hall. Honestly, once they made the previous two trades, it's like, well, how do you hold on to Breece Hall? Because, Jay, I don't think he's going to wind up back with the Jets, short of them giving him the franchise tag. As a free agent, he's going to look to go elsewhere. He's sort of made it clear that he had been wanting out recently, did not get his trade. And then Reek Woolen, the cornerback for the Seahawks, he's like a man-to-man type guy, whereas they play a lot more zone coverage there. But they're playing well. He's playing well. He had played really well previously in his career. So the Seahawks are saying, we're not going to give up a good cornerback. We're trying to compete here. And then they go out and get Rashid Shaheed on the other side. So they go out and they're buying. They're not selling. So that tells you where the Seahawks were. I do expect Reek Woolen to be one of the top free agents when it comes to the cornerback position in the spring. Going to make a lot of money, and he can make himself a lot of money by continuing to play well for the Seahawks down the stretch.
Mike, another bit of news on Tuesday, not involving the trade deadline. Following Monday night's win over the Cowboys, the Cardinals have now said, we're going with Jacoby Brissett. He managed to snap our 5-game losing streak, so he gets the job. Obviously, that leads to the most obvious question I will ask you today. What does this mean for the future of Kyler Murray?
Doesn't mean good things for Kyler Murray, that's for sure. I'm looking at the Cardinals potentially moving him in the offseason because right now they're saying it's sort of a 1-week thing, and Kyler Murray still has to focus on his health. And then all of a sudden you see reports coming out, well, now it's a 4 to 8 week injury and he could re-injure himself. I mean, it's clear where that's coming. That's coming from his camp on this one. The Cardinals didn't want to outright say, well, we're benching him. So they sort of threaded the needle between this is a health-related thing, but also Jonathan Gannon saying, I love how our offense is looking right now with Jacoby Brissett. It was tough for him to kind of maneuver on this one, Jay. I mentioned this on Good Morning Football yesterday before we knew what the decision was going to be. I said he's got to keep his credibility from saying Kyler Murray is our starter when he's healthy, but also the credibility of that locker room going, have you seen this offense with Jacoby Brissett? Looks a lot better. So they sort of stayed in the middle there, but it's clear that they are making the move toward Jacoby Brissett. Provided he continues to play well, he'll be the guy.
Mike, I know it's been an incredibly long day for you. You stuck around for us, and we truly, truly appreciate it. Get home to Jersey safe, pal, and enjoy the games this weekend.
You got it. Thank you, Jay.